And if you just bring yourself into that state of like excited joy energy, maybe not the exact thing that you're trying to manifest will always come through, but that or something better often does, because that energy of like joy and play and delight and curiosity is such a strong one.
So the minute we can disengage and accept what is, which is different than condoning, we're not saying it's right or wrong, but if we can accept what is, then we have the energy to make better decisions. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trust the Universe with Missy and Catherine, which is a podcast for sensitive, spiritually curious, and high achieving women who are ready to release control, step into surrender, and trust the flow of life. But we're going to do it all in a relatable and practical way. And today, our episode is all about, well, what does that actually look like? You say surrender, you say trust, but how do you do that? What does that look like in real life? So Catherine and I are going to talk about our own stories of surrender. But before I forget, I want to invite you to our next Trust the Universe with Missy and Catherine membership call, which is going to be on actually Sunday, March 9th at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, because we are going to Bali that evening. So we're going to be together for the first time in LA at my house, meeting for the first time, and we're going to do our call together. And it's going to be all about manifestation. So the whole call, the workshop will be about manifestation, and you can be part of the community, ask us questions. It's a 2-hour call. And if you'd like to sign up for that, it's in the show notes. All right, Catherine. So are you ready to share? Oh, no, before I forget, we're going to do our wink from the universe. So
Yeah.
what was special, exciting? What wink did you have from the universe this week?
Okay. Well, this week I brought back an old spiritual and magical tool that I've used in the past, but had like kind of forgotten. And it is writing my goals and manifestations on Scotch tape and then putting them on a jar of water that I drink out of. And
Oh,
this one, I don't know why I don't do it all the time because it has worked really well for me in the past. So essentially, I just like, I put out the Scotch tape. It doesn't have to be Scotch tape, it can be any kind of tape. And I take a Sharpie and I write down like I have ideal book agent and book deal. One of my goals with my husband is that we really want to pay off our mortgage this year, which would take certainly an act of God to be able to do, but like we're out there manifesting it. And a couple of other things. And this is the jar. I just drink out of like an old mason jar. It's like kind of like I don't have like a Stanley or a fancy like water cup or anything like that. Um, because the idea is that water absorbs intention. There's been a lot of I mean, the science on this is like mainstream science pushes back a lot on this, but there have been like more spiritually open scientists that have done research on the fact that water can be structured by intention and absorb attention. So if you are to like visualize and think love and gratitude into your water, that's going to affect the structure and the entire makeup of the water. And then you absorb that water and you're like amplifying everything. So to me, it's kind of got this twofold thing where I believe I'm structuring the water by putting my goals, and you could do this with affirmations too, on tape on this jar of water I drink out of every day. But also, like, I drink a lot of water. So I'm like looking at these things like, 10 times a day as I sip my water. And that's like a repeated subconscious way of getting those goals in my mind too. So that's what I'm doing this week.
ooh, I love that. Oh, I'm going to adopt that. You have
Yeah.
such good ideas.
What's your wink from the universe this week?
Yeah, so this week was Valentine's Day, or it was Valentine's Day, and Chuck's working and TV's works late. And so we didn't plan a Valentine's Day. And also, we usually don't go out on Valentine's Day because it's like traditionally chaos. And we're like, no. Um, but then that night we were like, oh, we don't have anything to do. We both had great weeks. We want to celebrate. So Chuck said, oh, I got off work early. Let's go somewhere. So I started calling around, and forget it. You can't get any reservation. And then I was like, wait, I know how to do this. Wait, I know how to manifest this. Like, forget it. So we have our favorite little neighborhood restaurant where we know everybody, just this little one. And so I was like, we're going to go there, even though it's small. And this is the game Chuck and I play all the time. It's like, wouldn't it be fun? So we literally said, he was a little bit more nervous. I was like, no, no, no. Wouldn't it be fun if we got a place right at, they have these bar stools and stuff. And we just got a place right there in this little corner that, of the bar right there. Wouldn't that be fun? And sure enough, we pull up, there it is, the corner. Not only any part of that little bar stool area, but the corner. So there it happened. And I do this all the time. Like, wouldn't it be fun if I got a great parking space? Wouldn't it be fun if I got free tickets? Wouldn't it be fun? And that is like my most favorite game. And I think it's because it's the joy piece and we're gamifying manifestation. So that's my fun week.
I love that. I think that's like a Neville Goddard technique. Do you know Neville Goddard? Have you ever heard of? He's like an OG, like 1900s manifestor, spiritual person. And from what I've read, I might be misquoting this, so apologies if so. One of his things is like, ask that question, wouldn't it be amazing if? And like, as you fall asleep, you can ask that question, like, tomorrow, wouldn't it be amazing if? And if you just bring yourself into that state of like excited joy energy, maybe not the exact thing that you're trying to manifest will always come through, but that or something better often does, because that energy of like joy and play and delight and curiosity is such a strong one.
And it also opens possibilities.
Yes.
Because it's just like opening the doors. And I'm glad you said that. I didn't know. I will say I didn't invent that. But I have no idea where I heard that, but I use it all the time.
Love it. So good.
Okay. Well, so Catherine, can you share with us some times in your life when you've surrendered, or what does it look like in practical terms to surrender and trust?
Yes.
Yep,
So first I wanted to even be like, tell what I think it means to trust the universe and what does it mean to surrender. And so for me, trusting the universe is this belief that every single moment unfolding in front of us is safe and is happening for a reason most times larger than we can see. And surrender is acceptance of what is happening in that moment, and not resisting it. So not trying to be like, this shouldn't be happening, I'm going to paddle upstream. The biggest metaphor I use for surrender is the idea that we're born into a river of life, and you can think of an actual river. And there's a lot you can do to navigate a river. You can strengthen your rowing skills, you can repair your boat, you can get better at navigation or reading the weather or the landscape, right? So it's not that you're without agency, because I believe in free will, I believe in agency for sure. But you're on this river and the river is going to take you where the river is going to go. And sometimes you're going to go through beautiful stretches, and sometimes you're going to go through really challenging whitewater or bad weather stretches too. And when we're surrendering and trusting the universe, we trust even when we're going through whitewater or scary storms, it's okay that this is happening. I let go of my oars. We'll see where the river takes me. What I too often see in my clients, and I'm sure you experience this a lot too, and I know this in myself, is we're like, nah, nah, no, I'm gonna paddle upriver. Like this isn't how it should be. So, and I'm gonna share a story from a spiritual teacher, and then I'll share a couple examples too. But the best book I've ever read on surrender is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Have you read that?
I've heard a lot about it. Yeah.
So an example, he decides, and this is like maybe in the 70s or 80s, he's just gonna he becomes a very deep meditator, and he gets into a lot of that world. And he just decides he's gonna do this experiment for his whole life where he will not resist anything that's happening in the moment. No matter what it is, no matter if he doesn't like it, he decides to discard preferences and meet what's happening in the moment. So he's becoming this sort of local meditation teacher, and he's bought some land in Florida where he lives, and he builds himself like a little house on it. And he starts to gain some followers who start to come to his home for meditation lessons and whatnot. And one day he has to leave. He has to go to like on a 6-week trip or something. And he comes back and one of his followers has decided to build a home next to his on his land. And he's like, are you crazy? Like, he has not given her permission. she has just decided to do this thing, and he's like, very irate, but he has this commitment to meeting whatever is happening in the moment, discarding preferences and not saying this shouldn't be happening. And so he ends that anecdote by saying he picked up his hammer and helped her build the home. And a year later, she moves out, another woman moves in, and that's the woman he marries.
Oh, it's so perfect.
It is the best, right? So that is surrender. Like that there is a flow of life that is happening. And now I want to make some discernment here because I don't think if somebody's abusing you or there's a painful emotional situation where you're being exploited. I'm not just saying like, well, just discard your preferences and like, be in that situation. It has something to teach you. Like, no, get out of that situation, right? But like these other situations where something is happening that you don't have a preference for, like how can you meet it? Now this is hard for spiritual sensitive women because it's like, well, where's the line between trusting surrender and being a pushover? And I think there's discernment for each of us in that in individual situations. But can you believe there's a flow of life that knows better than us in a lot of ways? I mean, we are, I was doing some yoga and stretching today, and for some reason I like had this insight. I was like, I'm so small. Like, this is my entire body. To me, it's like big. To an ant, it's big. But there was just, it almost felt like I was tripping or something. I don't know what happened, but I was like, you have those like thoughts when you're high and you're like, oh my God, my ant is crazy. That's kind of what it felt like. I was like, my body, I am so small. Like, who am I to think that I know best? Like, the universe has been evolving for what, billions of years, and it's created this flow of life. And we're a part of that too. So to me, trusting the universe is saying this flow is okay. Whatever happens and arises, I can navigate. I don't have to resist it. And surrender is practicing that day after day.
I love that. It's also, it just reminds me when we resist what is, we're using all of our energy to hold on or to say, why is this happening? I wish it was different. Why can't you be more like that? Which one takes away our power because it keeps us as stuck energy and we deplete ourselves. So we're actually of no use to create something new. So the minute we can disengage and accept what is, which is different than condoning, we're not saying it's right or wrong, but if we can accept what is, then we have the energy to make better decisions.
Yes. Yes. I'll definitely share some stories, but maybe actually, could you share what trusting the universe and surrender means to you? And then we can share some practical examples.
Yeah, so I'll give you two things. So one is I went to Spain and Chuck and I had this planned, this huge international trip. It was like our first international trip for a long time. And on day two or three, two, I think, I tore my calf muscle dancing. I don't know what. So my whole calf muscle just, I couldn't even walk. So that meant we had 10 days in Spain where I was on crutches. So instead of like resisting what is, I just really, for whatever reason, I just accepted, okay, this is what it is. And actually, we had the best trip ever in our whole lives. I mean, I don't know, you can ask Chuck, maybe, well, he had to do a lot of stuff for me, but because I wasn't resisting it, I just accepted this is the way it is. And we really connected with other people, and it was just really nice. What ended up happening when I came back, I actually had to go on disability because I was in production for like, I think 2 months, 1 or 2 months, a long time. And I was laid up actually in bed. Like I couldn't really do anything. But that forced me to dive deeper into my practice. And it was the beginning of becoming an energy healer. I mean, it was like a precursor, we could say, but it opened space, which I would never have done had I not been forced to do nothing. So
Uh,
that's great.
Yes, that's what I want people to understand here. The universe usually tries to like, there's some kick you out of the nest moments in
Yeah.
surrender, and people are like, the universe is punishing me. I got fired, and it sucks to get laid off. Like, I'm not discounting the fear and logical stuff that can come up around this, but the river or the surrender or the trust of the universe, the flow of the universe, to me is always pushing you towards your most authentic expression. I mean, I'll share this story. Maybe we can just trade stories back and forth.
Yeah, yeah.
Because one for me was around my job too. Like I before I started this business, I was in corporate for a long time, and my last job, um, it had gone well for a while, and I really loved parts of it, but I got a new boss, and it was just clear that they didn't like me. And it was like a really stressful experience because they weren't making my life easier. And I could read the writing on the wall. And it was right around the time I had like finished my life coaching certification. I knew like I knew in the way that you're like, well, this is just a stupid dream. I want to become a life coach, so I can't really do that. But like, if I could do
Mhm.
anything, that's what I would do. That
Yeah.
type of feeling. I was like, I want to become a life coach, but that's just a stupid dream. So like, obviously, I can't do that. But I could read the writing on the wall. I was like, this is like not going well for me. I need to find a new job. And so I applied to like dozens and dozens of jobs. And not to brag, but I was like a pretty good job candidate at the time. I had really good experience, good references, good degrees, whatever you need, right? I never even got like a screening interview anywhere. And so the paddling upstream would be like apply to more jobs, hire a career coach, talk to recruiter friends, like work harder, do more. And
Yes.
this is a whole long story, so I won't share it, but ultimately I was able to be like make the leap to because what was happening is the universe wasn't going to give me another corporate job. The universe was like, do your thing, girl. Like,
Yes.
opened every opportunity. And so, what seemed like a moment where I shouldn't trust, I was in kind of stuck in a toxic job situation. I was getting no other jobs. Like, um, it seemed like the situation, oh, the universe is punishing me. Why doesn't the universe just give me a new job so I can leave this place? The universe is like, no, like I got to kick you out of the nest so you can do this thing that you're supposed to do. So that's one of my surrender moments. I didn't really know it. I actually wasn't surrendering at the time. I mean, most of my stories are like moments where I was like not surrendering. I was resisting what was, but that's one of mine.
Well, that reminds me too, is I sort of believe so in both of our stories. I bet there were hints that we both ignored where it's because I feel like the universe, yeah, is always steering us toward our authentic self. But when we start veering off course, it starts tapping us like whispering, hey, Missy, maybe you want to look over there. Hey, oh, so I'm not listening. Okay, tap me on the shoulder. Missy, hey, not listening, banging me, Missy. And literally the universe had to like, okay, I'm going to break your calf muscle. I'm
Mhm.
not saying as a punishment, but it's going to keep getting louder until we actually say, okay, let me listen to what I know is true inside of myself, but I'm too scared to do.
Yes. Yes. And like, if you become a skilled navigator on the river metaphor that I'm using, you start to see the signs that the weather is changing one way or the other ahead of time. Now, it doesn't mean you get through life unscathed. Challenges, pain, loss, fear, they all still happen. But you're just like, okay, this is maybe going to be a shitty period of my life, you know? And it doesn't mean you roll over and you're passive. It's just like, this is a challenging period. What are my tools? I'm going to double down on this. I'm going to double down on that. I'm going to know it passes because nothing is forever. And I'm going to hold tight to my spiritual practices. And I'm going to do things that maybe can make this easier for me. Like maybe I end that toxic friendship, or maybe I sell this home because what I'm sensing is that it's time for me to move on, right? Like, and so your intuition is usually giving you all sorts of signals that you need to shed this or change that. And the intuition giving you those signals is akin to the metaphor of the weather changing on the river. And most of us resist our intuitive signals. We're like, well, that can't possibly be logical. Why am I getting the sense that I need to break up with this boyfriend? Why am I getting the sense that I need to move to Hawaii or wherever? Like, why am I getting the sense that I need to get a dog? Like, or whatever comes up. Because those are the intuitive nudges that the universe is trying to send you to help you flow more easily on the river.
Yes. And I just want to make one distinction is that sometimes we have so much fear in us that we read things kind of, I want to say, from a fear-based place, not an intuitive place.
Yeah.
So it could be like, my boyfriend and I just got in a fight. That's a signal I should leave. Not always.
Right.
like that. So really tuning into the body, like sometimes I feel like we get too much into that thing happened, so that means this. I want to caution that's not always true. I think what I would tune into more is into myself, like that. And like when I heard I'm an energy healer, like logically it did make sense, but I could feel in the body that was true. Just like, I don't know, could you feel in your body like I do really want to be a life coach, but the fears were keeping you?
Yes. I mean, there was that. Another one was in 2019. I was like, I want to move to nature. I'd lived in Washington, D.C. for 16 years. I lived in the city. And I was like, this is not logical. Like, my whole social circles are here. I want to date. And like, what if I move to like the woods? Who am I gonna meet? So, but it was just like a deeper knowing. And, I did it eventually. It took a few years, but I look back and I look now, I worked for a company that contracted heavily with the federal government. And I look back and I see now what's happening, this decimation of the federal government in this awful way. And I'm like, gosh, you know, who knows if I had it forced to stay myself in that job and stay in the city, what struggles I would be facing now. And so there are always these reflections where, again, it doesn't mean you escape challenge or pain, but these deeper knowings, they can be trusted.
Yeah.
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 So here's another story, and then maybe you can share and we can go back and forth. So if you're running a business like ours, where you're an intuitive person and you're kind of running the business intuitively, there is a lot of surrender. So in my first couple of years of life coaching, I ran this program. It was a mastermind for highly sensitive women called Soothe. And it was a big piece of work for me. It was a year-long mastermind, small groups, one-on-ones, 12 months of curriculum. And it was just something that really kind of was channeled through me and felt like this is really what I'm meant to do. And so the first year I did it, I had 25 women sign up, which is like a huge number. And then the second year, I was like, I don't know if I'm meant to run this, but like I was starting to feel like maybe I should, but in my head was like, oh, this is like your biggest money maker. Like you have to run it for sure. So I was like, okay, I'm going to run it again. And 16 women signed up, still like, you know, a great group. And then the third year, I was like, I don't want to run this anymore. But I was like, I feel like I have to because it's kind of what I'm known for. And, it makes up a bulk of the revenue that I make. And I promote it so hard, like I did everything. And ultimately, 5 women signed up. Now, that was the perfect group. It was the perfect year with those women. They were incredible. I actually feel like it was meant to be just like that. But instead of being like, why isn't this working? Like, I need to double down. I need to like hire a marketing expert. I need to hire like a sales page copywriter or whatever. Because obviously this is what I do, and I should just keep running Soothe, and I should get more and more and more people. After that year where only 5 women signed up, I was like, this program is done, and I don't know what I'm doing next. And the last version of Soothe ended a few months ago, and I still don't really know what I'm doing next. Like I think I'm being ushered into the space where I'm going to become more of a writer and author, but I don't have any signs that that is really going to work out. And so there's a surrender there. I'm giving up a program that was my biggest income maker for many years. And the universe is also showing me. Like, I guarantee if I tried to run Soothe again this year, just like nobody would have signed up. So there's this intuition, but I fought it with logic, being like, oh, I should keep running this because it's such an important part of my offerings. But the universe, the proof was in the pudding. Like enrollment numbers were like dropping, dropping, dropping. I felt like this isn't what I meant to run either. And so I said, okay, like I'm going to end it before I know what's next. Like
Yeah.
I have an idea of another big program or another huge offering. So that was like in the business, like an example of my surrender.
Actually, listening to you gets me so excited that story, because what I hear is you're making space. Because if you kept doing soothe, even if it had however, I don't know, however many people in it, one person or 25, it's taking up your time and your energy. You're meant for something else. And I think that that's really hard to let go of what we're used to. It's like that whole thing you always hear, you're grabbing the ring and you're like, you have one hand on the ring and you're reaching for the next one and you haven't grabbed it yet. So
Mm.
it can be really scary. But I think if we have the belief, everything, like my belief really is everything is happening for me, and then I kind of add that caveat even when I don't understand it, because it's kind of that idea, like if anyone's a parent or anyone who's been around young children, if you have like a 3-year-old going, I want candy for dinner, well, you're going to say no if you're an adult, because you know that is not healthy for the child. But all the child knows is, I didn't get my candy, I didn't get my manifestation, I'm going to have a tantrum potentially. So I sort of feel like that's sometimes the universe has this greater plan that we don't access yet, we don't understand. So we just trust, just like maybe as a child we trust our parents are hopefully, doing what's for our best interests because they're grown-ups.
Yes, I think that's a really actually useful metaphor to think about. Most of us didn't have perfect parents who were
Yeah.
unconditionally loving, but imagine that you did. And let's just say you're a kid and your parents come to you and they say, we need, I think maybe I heard this on the Manifestation Babe podcast. I can't remember, but it was something like this. It was like her metaphor was like, imagine your parents come to you and they say, we need you have this teddy bear you love, but it's time for us to take it away. And you would be like, no, like, what? Like, this is, and so there's loss and there's pain and there's grief. And then the next morning they wake you up because they're taking you to Disney World and they've gotten you like the newest teddy bear that you wanted, right? Like, so you know, I there's so many, it's so hard to talk about this like in a meaningful and practical way because you also want to acknowledge challenges and privilege and loss and grief and the hard times of life in surrender. And so it can sound really glib to say, well, it's all just working out. And I know you don't mean that, and I certainly don't either, but there is often this flow to even the moments when we feel the most challenge in life, where it feels like everything is stripped away from us and we're on our knees, and that's surrender. And what could be around the corner if we could only let go and be like, this is where I am. My husband's leaving me.
Yeah.
I got laid off. I'm sick. Instead of focusing all your energy, it shouldn't be like this. Why am I being punished like this? It's doing whatever you can to be like, it is like this. And I have to accept it. And I have to gather my courage and my strength and my energy to steward myself through it. And then maybe in a couple of years or however long, I'll look back and I will understand then.
Yeah, and that also reminds me of, we've talked about before, the ladder of emotions, which is every emotion is a vibration. So it's not like one's better or worse, but how can we choose the next higher vibration? So if you're thinking about an illness or something, like, or somebody passing away, the grief is real. Like we have to feel, that's a normal thing to feel grief. But then it can maybe turn into the next higher emotion is anger, which is now our energy is moving. Maybe we're angry that we got cancer or something, we got sick, that anger. And then the next one above that is courage. So, how can we grab the next one above, just above? And can we do that? Like, it's just a way to move forward. And then with courage, right, it gives us the next, that's the emotion. We can choose to do the next thing. So, it's always, how can we kind of climb that emotional ladder?
Yeah. And I had, another story. Last summer, I had like all the suspicious mammograms. I had to get all these biopsies and like I was like not knowing for a month if I had breast cancer or not. And it was such a scary time. I took a lot of Xanax because I just needed help. It was like such an intensely anxiety inducing time for me. But like what kept me together was like, if I have it, then I have it, and I'm gonna use it to help others. I'm gonna use this experience to change my life. I'm gonna use this experience to come out stronger and better on the other side. I'm gonna use this experience for learning, and health stuff is the ultimate surrender. Like that is, that can really feel like the universe, I think, is punishing you for some people. And, I can't speak to that because that's such an intensely personal journey to go through if there's some serious illness that happens for you or a loved one. Um, and what you often hear, at least I do from people I know and people I've worked with and people I've listened to on podcasts, that it's a clarion wake up call for their lives in so many ways, And so I thought for me, if this is going to happen for me, there's a wake up call here for me in some capacity. I immediately took a sabbatical for 3 months because intuitively and through guidance from you and other people I work with and know, it was clear that this is like possibly a whisper, starting to be a louder whisper of overgiving in my life. And I was like, I'm going to get ahead of the curve if I can, So I was like, I hear the message, universe. Um, I I ended up not having cancer, like some precancerous cells, and had to have surgery, a lumpectomy, but not cancer. And it was also a health wake up call for me too. Like I have this thing where I think I present as healthy, and I believe I am now, but which is such a weird thing in America. It's like people think you're healthy if you're a particular size, and it's not, so since I wasn't overweight, I think, and I'm active, people are like, oh, Catherine's healthy. I'm like, I wasn't really healthy. Like I'm a chronically stressed out person. I used to essentially abuse alcohol. I used to smoke. I eat a lot of sugar. My diet's not there. But like I was like, okay, this is happening, and I'm going to surrender to what this situation is asking of me. It's asking of me to renegotiate my relationship with my work and overgiving, and it's also asking me to renegotiate like how I really am with my health, and that was the surrender.
Yeah, but that's such a great way to look at it because it was that knock, 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 and you answered. Like you looked at it, you said, okay, I hear you. I'm going to explore, what does this mean? What do I think I need to be learning? Or really take an evaluation of where you are.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, overgiving or wherever something feels imbalanced, because I think any of this is looking at balance. Everything energetically, I feel like, is balanced. So wherever we're in balance is what we're usually being called to look at when we get knocked off of balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any other stories come to mind for you that are useful to share?
Yeah, I just want to say that when I was thinking about this, the place that I do it every day is in my work. And when I go into a session, I literally have to trust that whatever information is coming in about that person, whatever ancestor I'm seeing, whatever child I'm seeing, whatever belief I'm finding, emotion I'm finding is correct. And that is a huge leap of faith. And in the beginning, I really struggled with telling people what I saw. Well, one, believing that what I saw was actually real or was quote right, what they needed to hear. And then my ego would get in the way and be like, no, I can't, that's too hard, I can't tell them that. And that is not my job. My job is to get my ego out of the way. And this is kind of a metaphor, I think, for everything. But in session, my job is to get my ego, Missy, out of the way and just have, kind of like what you were saying, no preferences, to not get in the way, just let the information come in. And then my job is to share it, not censor, can this person take it? Is this person? It's not about that. And I've had many examples where, like in the very beginning, like just even when I was first learning working in sessions, one time I got really lost in the middle of a session with somebody. I was new and I was trying to read it and I couldn't read anymore. I just really got mixed up in the middle of the session. I couldn't figure it out the next thing. And literally the phone went dead. Like the connection was lost. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like I didn't do it. The connection was lost. I think my guides cut the connection on the phone so that I literally had time to reground myself, ask for help, recenter myself, and call this woman back. And by the time I called back, I was back online. But those are the kinds of things. And then one last one was I was in session with a woman, this lovely woman, and I saw something that looked a little bit scary behind her. Like I saw it's a big kind of male kind of energy. And so I skirted around it. First I said, oh, I shouldn't say it. She's going to be scared. That's menacing looking. Oh, I shouldn't do it. But I said, okay, I had made a commitment with spirit by this point. that I am going to trust you in session to give me the information that's needed and necessary for that person, and that that person can handle it. So I kind of skirted around it, but I said it, well, it's a male-ish figure. Well, it's kind of large. I don't know. I tried to say it like nicely. And she goes, oh, you're seeing my inner gorilla. Cool. And I was like, you know that that thing? And she's like, oh yeah, that's my inner gorilla. And I was like, oh my God, like, why am I so worried about like being right, or she's gonna be scared? That's not my job. So I think that for me, the ultimate trust and surrender happens in a session, and I'm constantly working that muscle. Like every session, I'm like, okay, just breathe through it, trust the process, trust what I'm getting, just trust,
Yeah.
and get out of the way.
I love that story because that's a huge thing about the ego. The ego thinks things should be a way, whether it's, you know, because I get that too. Like when I'm doing feng shui or tarot, sometimes weird stuff will come up and I'm like, well, I don't get this, but I gotta say it anyways because, you know, I want to be perceived as like I know everything. And sometimes the reality is like when I'm doing these readings, I don't like
Yes.
I just have to present what's there. Um, and the ego that actually reminds me of a story from a person I know who there's a lot of resistance going on. Now, this is a difficult situation. So here I'll like say the outlines of the story is that she works in a particular field and work hasn't, and she runs her own thing. And it hasn't, she's basically been like head butting against the wall, I would say, for a couple of years now. Like it hasn't really been working out for her. And she also has young children, which is a challenge too when you're trying to be an entrepreneur and raise young children. And what happened is like in they got basically she twisted her ankle. They had so much snow. Her kids have like not gone to school in like 6 weeks. I mean,
Oh,
on and off they have, right? But like, and it's just been this time where she's like, but I gotta work. I gotta work. Like I'm snatching every moment I can out of work. Like I can't believe they're not going to school again because I should be able to work. I should have this time. And I don't say anything because like who am I to judge? I don't have children. That seems like a horrible situation. But like in my head, I'm like, well, what if you just accepted what was present, which seems to be rest and being with your kids, and you just said whatever for whatever reason the work is not flowing right now, and you know, the ego will say, well, it should because I need money and I need to make my business grow in this way. But the river of life is rising. What it wants you to meet is twisted ankle, rest, kids home from school, presence with your kids for at least this period of time. And that's hard because especially it's really hard to surrender under capitalism. Maybe we should even do a whole episode about that because it's this thing of, you know, will I have enough money? You know, and that's scary to surrender in those times too. Because I'm a little bit in that right now. Like I still haven't been bringing in very much income since I took my sabbatical. And you know, you kind of watch your savings go down and you're like, and I'm just trying to trust that something will come through and I'll be supported. But, you know, I get nervous too because money is how we live. And, you know, but I'm also like trusting the universe, but I'm still like, oh gosh, this is a little bit like nerve-wracking and scary.
mhm.
So that's an example of like where her ego thinks she should be with work and where, you know, it feels like you have to be with work because of capitalism, especially as a working mom. That's a whole different ball game. But what the universe is presenting me with is this, you know? And so what happens if she can be like, this is how it is right now? And what if I just put work on pause for the next few weeks, healed my ankle, spent time with kids? Maybe the thing was like, maybe that step away from work would give her the creative idea that would re-energize her business. Or maybe the distance from work would let her see like, this isn't working and I need to let it go, you know? But I think there's an invitation there and she's not surrendering to it ultimately.
And also the energy is like, and same with me in a session with my ego, it's always, we think we know better,
Yep.
right? It's like, wait, that can't be. I know better. I need to be working, or I need to not tell her what I see, or whatever it is. It's our ego saying it knows better. And it's okay because our ego really is here to protect us often, right? So, it's okay, but being aware that there might be another way to think about it. I think that's really what it's about. Like, oh, is there another way to think about it? Just opens the door to
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. And maybe what we can sort of start to wind down on is the surrender of what's going on right now in the world collectively, especially in the United States politically. And for me, there was this piece, and I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes, but I wrote it on the Sunday Soother. But there was a piece by this woman, Renee Churches, about climate change. And she lives in Australia. And or no, she has a friend who lives in Australia who survived some of the bushfires in 2019, 2020 that happened. And what this sounds defeatist, but what I'm trying to suggest is like, what if we accept, and what she writes and is trying to suggest is, what if we accept this is as bad as it is, that maybe we will not solve climate change? In fact, it seems likely that we won't. And I'm going to read this excerpt from her. Um, so she says, what else is there? All we can do is get up each day and adapt to the changing circumstances as best we can, attempting to stay healthy, well-adjusted, mentally stable, and able to contribute to disaster risk reduction in whatever ways are available to us. And then she writes, and I think this is where I want us to think about what this means for us collectively and individually. What possibilities open up if we accept defeat? If we say we have failed and that the breakdown of our civilization could continue to unfold in our lifetime. Imagine the creative energy, mourning, cooperation, and humility that would abound. Imagine setting the younger generation free from the obsession with career, money, working, and other irrelevant concerns in a collapsing world. The massive mental health crisis affecting youth today may be alleviated if they heard some truth telling or plain speaking from adults, a deep, heartfelt apology from our generation to theirs. There could be a flourishing of our civilization, loving family and friends, enjoying the arts and communities in new ways as we simplify our lives, a celebration of all our achievements, as well as forgiving ourselves for the error of our ways. We can make amends to wild creatures and first peoples everywhere. Love the damaged and degraded places of the earth, as well as protect the best to our abilities the remaining precious wilderness from the force of global capital. And so that's a little bit darker. And, I'm eminently talking about climate change and collapse and everything, but what if we meet it where it is, rather than say this shouldn't have happened? We should be like this. And I'm not saying, we discount protesting or fighting or other efforts, but what happens if we just rest and we lean back and we say, this is here? What energy becomes free when I think about surrender? What I think about is one woman believing she can hold up a dam, like
Yeah.
a dam that's holding back, like the Hoover Dam. And she feels she's responsible for holding back that dam. What if the dam collapses? What if the river comes through and it wipes away everything? Well, what if you step back and the natural force of the universe comes rushing through this thing that you thought you were holding up all alone? Maybe there is some destruction, maybe villages are wiped out, but maybe the natural force of the river comes and it helps the land to flourish again. And maybe what can you do with that energy that you
Yeah.
were using to hold up the dam by yourself? You
Yeah.
can help people. And if the river is fine and it brings abundance, you can enjoy that abundance, right? And to me, that's like when we resist surrender, we think we're the woman who should be holding up the dam,
Yes.
but instead we have all this energy to enjoy life as it is.
Yes. And even when you were saying that, that idea of using your energy to resist, which is that energy of holding the dam, what if you let go and you allowed the energy of what is to help you learn how to swim, like a new skill, or you float? Now you have different energy. Or as you said, maybe it knocks out places that needed to be, or I don't know, or maybe no longer useful, and it creates something else. The other thing that kind of made me think about was that part of sort of loving all parts of yourself somehow was coming to me when you were saying, there's some dark parts, and like the environment maybe is maybe dying in certain ways. Well, you know, we're of a certain age, our bodies are not what they were. We are just, everybody gets older, right? How can we love all the parts of ourselves, even the parts that are maybe falling away, or I don't know, that sounds gross or weird, but do you know what I mean? Like the parts that are, maybe not as healthy or whatever. I don't know. I'm butchering this
I get
metaphor,
it.
but what I meant is loving all parts of yourself, meaning the quote good and the quote bad. Like the way that the world is has some parts that are not great right now. But how can we accept it, add more love to it, and then focus on one area? And I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is we can be overwhelmed by all the things that are happening in this world. We can be angry, and maybe we have a right to be angry. And I don't want you to not be angry, but we don't want to move into overwhelm and paralysis, because then we are of no use. So if you don't want to watch the news because you see what it does to your energy, but other people are saying, oh, you're just putting your head in the sand, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe it's giving you energy to pick one thing to work on. And maybe that's what we're being called, to just focus our energy on one way that we can love the world back into something that you want it to be.
Yes. Yes. So I hope today's episode helped you understand our philosophies on trust and surrender. There's a practical way to approach this. It doesn't mean, love and light, spiritual bypassing, everything's working out for the highest good. And then sometimes, can you be with the moment and be like, well, how could this be working out possibly for me? How can I make the most of this moment? And at the very least, how can I accept what is and then be of service? Because I know for me and Missy, being of service is like one of our hopeful highest callings. And I bet for everybody listening, it is too. And so when you surrender to what is, you can clearly see your role in what you're meant to be doing in the given moment that we're all facing, whether it's personal, whether it's collective, community-based, family-based, whatever. Acknowledge what is. You can't hold up the dam on your own. And it's okay. The universe is going to do what the universe is going to do. That river is going to come through because there is an impenetrable flow of life. It is how the universe has always worked, and it's okay because it's the universe, and that doesn't mean we're all going to live puppies and rainbows forever and ever, but sometimes when there's this surrender and the stepping back, an ease comes in, a comfort comes in, and an ability to trust unfolds if you can let it.
Yeah, just that idea that life always wins. And if you think about the concrete building that fell down, but weeds still grow up through the cracks, there's always the force of life that wants to live. And I think that always gives me hope.
Yeah. So I think maybe our questions for you all today is like, where are you resisting? How can you accept what is? And you're resisting and surrendering. Um, in a lot of ways, if you're efforting in a way beyond what is natural for your capacity. So you deserve to like also drop that efforting, stop holding up that dam, and just let yourself be carried by the flow too.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks for talking, Missy. This is a really good episode, and we encourage your questions. We have a form too. I'll put in the show notes if you want to ask us an anonymous question or have any topic suggestions, or you can DM us or email us. It's Missy at missyenergyhealing.com and Catherine at CatherineDiazandDavidAndrews.com. We'd love to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you all soon.